as times have changed, we've gone digital. And so we've got podcasts and we've got YouTube, and we've really started to get into the video space as well. So here we are, you're 25 years into this vision and this mission, and you've been constantly taking risks because you know that what got us here won't get us there.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the evolution from radio show into documentary land.
Yeah, it's like with anything, with not just in what we do, but any of the business owners listening, it's you can't just rest in what has got you to where you are today. We've reached a level of success, of course, because we've done radio for 30 years. We've done podcasts for 15 years since the inception. We've done YouTube since it started. So we have done a good job of working at making those better, being number one. We're in the top 1% on all those things I just named. But we can't just sit in that and rest in that and get fat and not keep moving ahead. So we're constantly having to say, where's the consumer? Where's the industry going? And of course, streaming is huge right now. And so that's something that we need to be on. We're not on Netflix today. We need to be on Netflix, Hulu, whatever. We might need to have our own streaming app. So those are the things we're looking at and seeing consumers over there in this huge field. Though we have 18, 20 million listeners on all our other stuff, podcasts, YouTube, and radio, there are so many more people we're not touching and hitting in this day and age on where places we're not. So you talk about the documentary. That was a great example of, hey, people are watching documentaries. People are watching film. People are streaming this stuff in their living rooms at home. We're not there, and we need to be there. So that's the only way you're going to grow, even as a business, is not just resting on what you've accomplished today, but always looking forward in the future and where the customer and the consumer is going.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's this kind of balance that I feel where we're listening to the customers, we're seeing what's happening out there in the marketplace, but we're also trying to balance that with our mission and our vision and making sure that we're aligning those two things.
That's right.
Is that where a lot of these decisions come from when you guys decide to do something new?
Yeah, it is. It's all about what level of strategy or risk you're going to take. We can't just, you look back in the history of this company and I can show you times where we just shot like this big, huge, we call it musket balls or cannonballs. You guys have talked about it on the podcast, I'm sure, around here when we talk about risk. And that is, how can we learn from the customer by surveying, testing, shooting musket balls versus $1 million cannonball? Like, let's go do this documentary because we feel it's a good idea or we think it is. You can look back in history on times we did the latter and it failed. But if we did it right and gradually took the strategic risk instead of this carefree or we think or feel or wet finger in the air kind of risk, that's what's led to success in the past. And that's how we teach our team going forward and how to launch anything brand new.
So for the business owners out there, they're going, okay, Blake, so you're saying I don't need to go spend $1 million on this huge risk. I can take some small steps today and start to test some things out and see what resonates and see what works before I make a huge financial decision.
Definitely. I just highly encourage those listening. One thing that we've learned in the last 25 years is just find out from your customers, your consumer, what's the felt need, where's the market going, et cetera, versus basing it on a feeling or a gut thing only, and then just pouring a lot of money on this huge risk and just hoping it works versus, again, these musket ball kind of shooting these little musket balls and gradually building upon them and learning. And then going, okay, we've proven this is what the market's headed or where the market's headed. We've proven this is what the consumer wants. This is their felt need. So now we can invest this money or whatever this into this thing that's going to hit those needs.
So let's talk about this documentary, Borrowed Future, how the student loans are killing the American dream. This is really our first foray into film and documentary, and it's very exciting. Our team saw a screener. Obviously, the documentary is coming out October 14th. I can't wait for everyone to stream it and check this thing out. But we did some musket balls here with this before we said, hey, we're going to spend, $1 million and do a documentary.
That's right.
There were some steps we took to get there. Talk to us about that.
That's a great example. Instead of just going, hey, we know we should be over here because we're not in the documentary world or the film world. Let's just invest $1 million and go create this documentary and choose the topic just based on what we feel it would work. That would be an error. So what we did is we said, okay, how can we test that this stuff resonates? So we decided to do the Borrowed Future podcast a few years ago, and George was a huge part of that. I highly recommend you go listen to that series. And that was a risk for us, but a lower risk. And when I say it was a risk, it was we had never done that type of storytelling podcast. We're great at having a personality and a host and a call-in type show and everything we do, and we've proven that for years, but we've never done a storytelling kind of thing around a topic like the student loan industry. So that was a risk, but it was more of a musketball risk where we said, let's try to just do a podcast with the resources we have, the team we have. We didn't have to go hire a host. We had George. We didn't have to go hire this whole team to do it. Let's try it with our own team just to prove the thing first. And that was 8 episodes, I believe, 8 or 9 that you guys did. And the success around that was amazing, and it resonated. And everyone knows student loans is a problem right now, but when you really talk to the people in the industry and the people who have been burned by them and are like living in that crisis right now, like you guys did with that Borrowed Future podcast, we learned this is a big deal. This is huge. And we were smart enough to go, hey, while we're doing this audio, let's take some cameras and film too, in case this grows into something else. Very small risk, still a risk, but what it did is it proved the fact that, hey, this could be also a film now because of the success of the podcast, and that's what made us step into, okay, now let's invest some dollars and try our first step into the documentary world.
That's awesome. And you're right. I mean, after, 1.5 million downloads with the Borrowed Future podcast, we're going, okay, clearly people care about this topic and they want to hear from us on this issue.
That's right.
And we know that visual components are so huge. Everyone's watching devices these days. Yeah. Let's do something visual that people can really grab onto and watch in 90 minutes.
Yeah, so it was a good mix of knowing that there's an area that we're not in and should be, but instead, like you said, investing all resources, hiring a whole team, spending $1 million plus, and just going, we figured out ways to baby step into that and prove it first and end up exactly where we wanted to be, proving that it's a needed thing.
Yeah. And this is all tied to our vision, which is important to remind people that we're not taking risks that are outside of our mission or our vision. And it really helps when you're taking a leap towards the vision, you're going to get closer to the vision and to the mission. So that's a great reminder for the listeners. And this documentary, it probably took a lot more time and a lot more money than you guys expected. So talk to the listeners about what it looks like when you kind of jump a little further than you wanted to into the risk.
Again, I feel like we did it the best we could by not jumping fully on the other end of we're going all team, all money, all resource. But at the same time, even the way I explained we did it with the podcast and proving it, it was still a major risk because we had never done that before. So I think your point is dead on. Our mission is to help people and give them hope and to meet them where they're at with the resources, et cetera. And this student loan thing was so proven that it's such a crisis on the news, everywhere you look. But after talking to them and meeting with them and all that, it factored into that risk. It was like, it's still on mission. We've proven it up to this point. It's a place we need to be. So let's invest some dollars. And at the end of the day, just because we did this documentary and it's going to be streamed on October 14th, that doesn't mean we've hit the pinnacle. That's still a test too. It's our first one. So we're going to have to see on the back end, was this worth it? The time, resources, 2 years to make, the money we put into this. And we're hoping it is, and we feel we did the right strategy to get there. But a risk is a risk, no matter what level you look at it. But you got to be willing to take those in order to grow and go down that path. We're taking this risk in hopes to helping millions of kids not make a terrible decision to go into college with debt and come out 20 years still having that debt. That's a risk we're taking because we feel so strongly about helping fix that problem. But at the same time, we're hoping this documentary resonates and works so we can do another documentary. The worst thing to do is this thing's just flat and we took this risk and it doesn't work out. We're probably not going to go spend a ton of money in the documentary world. Will we look at and try something else? Sure. We're going to risk streaming coming up shortly. We're going to risk television programming, et cetera, things we're not at.